Greek students, just wanted to check in. Sorry I was sick this last week, but I thought getting a little bit of a lecture in about chapter, where we at? Chapter 33 on imperatives, and then chapter 34 also would be helpful. But I'll start with chapter 33. So this chapter is about imperatives, the imperative mood. And the imperative mood is the mood of making a command. So when we would say, when somebody said eat or like watch out or look, something like that, those would be imperatives. And so the way this works in Greek is we would translate it as a command. So a couple just basic ideas about the imperative. Imperatives only occur as present in the present tense as well as aorist tense. So knowing your present tense stems and your aorist tense stems will be helpful. And then again, with present and aorist in non-indicative moods, like participle, subjunctive, infinitive, there's no time significance to these. There's only aspect. Either present is continuous or imperfective, and the aorist is undefined or perfective or simple occurrence. And we're going to look at a few ways of stating prohibitions and negations. So if we look at the Greek here, a couple things about the imperative. Look at 33.3. Imperatives in Greek are only in the second and third person. So there are no first person imperatives. So the closest thing we have to a first person imperative is what we call, is back in the subjunctive, the hortatory subjunctive, where we would say, let us, not give up meeting together, or let us consider how to spur one another on towards love and good deeds. These, and oftentimes first-person plurals. Let us do that, and those would be first-person plural subjunctives. Imperatives only have second-person imperatives, and in English we only use second-person imperatives, like look or watch out. Like there's an implication, you look or you watch out or you come here, something like that, or be quiet or something like that. Only second person. One unique thing about Greek is that they actually have third person imperatives. So blepeto. So blepe means watch out or look, or blepete means watch out or look. But blepeto is a third person singular imperative. And it means let him look, or he must look, or have him look. The key words then have to be used in that. And we don't have anything like that in English as a third person imperative. We only have second person imperatives. So that's something just to note, that we have a little bit of a different thing going on in Greek. In terms of the form of imperatives, you can look at 33.5 and 33.6, but since they're present tense and aorist tense imperatives, your present tense imperatives are built on a present tense stem. You got a connecting vowel, and then you get these imperatival morphemes that are down here, like to, te, toson, and sto, ste, stoson. And we'll talk about the second singulars in just a bit. But you get a present tense stem, a connecting vowel, and the imperatival morpheme, either to, te, toson or sto, ste, stoson. When you get to the aorist, a first aorist, you would use a aorist tense stem, unaugmented, no augments. Obviously, we're not in the indicative, so we don't augment our aorists here. We get a saw tense formative, and then we get the imperatival morpheme. So lusato means let him loose. Both of these mean let him loose, but one is a present tense, one is an aorist tense. So we add on these imperative morphemes onto our present and aorist tense stems, and so the way this looks, you can see here with second singular lue. The reason why these are question marks is they're just irregular. They're very irregular. It's hard to say what exactly the morpheme is for a second person singular, and for that reason, I have included in your on Canvas an Excel sheet of all the second singular imperatives in the Greek New Testament, and they go alphabetically, and you can see there's present aorists and there's present imperatives and aorist imperatives, and they just go all. You can look at how they work all the way through and what they look like. So here's akuo, which would be akue, listen, or age, which means bring it, or ire, which means lift it up. And it's talking to a person in the second singular. You can work all the way through this if you want to just take a look at these. Here's ginamai as a present singular, second singular. Anyway, take a look through there. Like here's ekbale, cast it out, cast out, or say. Anyway, there's all kinds of ways you can work through this, but I included that just for your. It's 16 pages on an Excel sheet, but you can look at it and just kind of work through it if you'd like. But the reason why second singulars are so they're just irregular in that way. So here's our present tense. Present tense, active, middle, and passive. You can see the to, te, tosan here, and the sto, ste, stosan as a middle, and here's a passive sto, ste, stosan. If you look over at the aorist, the first aorist, your saw tense formative is what shows up, but look at the second singular for luo as a first aorist. Luson would mean loose. Lusato, lusate, lusatosan. Your middle, lusai, lusasto, lusaste, lusastosan. And then with aorist passives, of course, you have your aorist passive tense formative theta eta. So it's lutheti, lutheto, luthetosan, luthete, luthetosan. And those are your present and first aorists. As we get into second aorists, you can see here lambano, here's our second aorist, labe, labeto, labete, labetosan, and ginamai and grapho. So those are examples of second aorist. You just have to know your stems there. But look, your second aorist, your second singulars are irregular, but you still have the to, te, tosan and the sto, ste, stosan, and so those are helpful there. There is a unique form of a me in 33.12, and so the isthi would be the command be, just be. And then if you wanted to say let him be, you would say esto. If you wanted to say be to everyone, to all you all, este, and then estosan is let them be. So those are good examples of imperatives. Again, beyond that, there's not much. There a couple of things I guess to point out is you do have some confusing forms here in the sense that the second singular. Look at luate here. I'm sorry, your second plural of luate looks exactly the same as a present active indicative second person plural. It's the exact same thing, exact same form. And in order to do this, you would really just you would have to look at the context. The context is what tells you whether this is an imperative or an indicative. So one good example of this is in Philippians. At the beginning of chapter 3, in 3:2, he says, "Blepete tas kunos." Look out, watch out for the dogs, watch out for the evildoers, watch out for those who mutilate the flesh. And it's these three blepete. Now, blepete as a form, it's the exact same form as the present active indicative second person singular or second person plural. But the context is telling you that you probably ought to not translate it as you are looking out for the dogs, you are looking out for the evildoers, you are looking out for those who mutilate the flesh, because it seems as though that repetition is implying watch out, watch out, watch out. So in that case, you would translate these as imperatives and then parse them as imperatives, even though the forms are essentially identical in the indicative and the imperative on these second person plurals. So just a little heads up on that, and you can take a look and see what that looks like. And that brings us essentially down here to the idea of the meaning and how these get translated. There's a couple of places where we see commands, like in the case of Philippians chapter 3, blepete, watch out. That's a command. Jesus in Mark 2 says, akaluthe moi, follow me. And this is akalutheo. Here's a second person singular imperative. Follow me. Or here, a second plural of the verb didomi, which we're going to get to next chapter. You give them something to eat. You give them something to eat. That's one example. But one place we also see imperatives is in prayer. And in prayer, we'll oftentimes see imperatives to God. Now, when we use an imperative towards God, we're not commanding God. It's what we would call an imperative of entreaty. It's asking for something. So here we have, Lord, didoxon hemas prasyukasthai. Teach us to pray. It's a command, but the disciples are not commanding Jesus, hey, you teach us to pray. The disciples are asking Jesus to teach them to pray. So teach us to pray. In the Lord's Prayer, which we're going to be looking at in class because you can memorize the Lord's Prayer, but there's actually a string of imperatives in the Lord's Prayer. Actually, let's see if I can pull this up as an example here, the Matthean Lord's Prayer. Pull this up as a PDF. And here's the Lord's Prayer. So when you pray, in this manner, therefore, when you pray, pater hemon ha en tois uranois, and then we have these three imperatives: hagiasteto ta anamasu, eltheto hebasaleasu, genetheto ta thelemasu. So these are three imperatives, and here they're third singular imperatives: to. So hagiadzo is, so here's the subject of the imperative: ta anamasu, your name, let it be holy. So hallowed be thy name. Let it be your name, let it be holy. Let your name be holy. He basileasu, your kingdom, let it come. Eltheto, let it come. Your kingdom, let it come. Or your kingdom come. And then here we have tathelemasu, your will, let it become. Genetheto. So your name, let your name be made holy, let your kingdom come, let your will be done. And those three imperatives are, and then as in heaven, also on earth. And I think the idea with this is that these three things, the prayer is that these three things would happen: God's name being made holy, God's kingdom coming, and God's will being done. Let them, all three of these things, let them be done epigeis, on earth, as in heaven. So there's more imperatives in the Lord's Prayer. So this idea of dos, give us the bread, our bread for today, our daily bread. And then office, forgive us our trespasses. And then esenenkes, this is actually a subjunctive: do not lead us, that you might not lead us. So anyway, this is an example. The Lord's Prayer is a great example of imperatives of entreaty. So there is also, the Lord's Prayer is on the Canvas site, so you can download that for memorization and writing it on the back of the final. That would be great. But this is a good example of some imperatives there. So some are commands. Some, if an imperative is used in prayer, it's an imperative of entreaty. So that should get us to what we're looking at trying to do with this chapter. You can look at the vocabulary. There's only 3 words: apalumi, which is a me verb. We'll be getting into me verbs next chapter, which means I destroy or I kill. Apaluo, I release. And eta, which is if or whether. All right. So I hope this was helpful. We'll have a chance to talk about this more in class as we work through this. But again, apologies that I was not well, but hopefully this was helpful. Good. So I hope this is helpful, and I'll see you with chapter 34 next up.